Welcome to the Called to Love podcast, a show dedicated to exploring how human relationships and intimacy with God are connected. Join us as we discuss hard-hitting topics that inspire and motivate you to go deeper into the intricacies of building meaningful relationships. Here now are your hosts, James Levesey and Brian Knadel.
Today we're going to be talking about something, my favorite subject above everything else, and that's intimacy.
Intimacy with the Lord.
Yes. I love this. I'm glad you prefaced that.
But having said that, what is the biggest question is, why is it such a difficult thing to experience?
It's got to be the most deficient thing in Christianity that I've ever seen in my life. And I know this because we have spent an enormous amount of time with people. I mean, thousands of hours talking to people about issues and problems in their life and things like that. And every time we start going towards questioning about intimacy with the Father, it's like it's an unknown thing. So it is a secret. He calls it the secret place for a reason.
And in Matthew 6, he brings it up about, first of all, he tells you what it doesn't look like, and then he tells you what you need to do, and that is to go in your room and shut the door and go before the Father personally. And so what is the biggest reason why people struggle with that, the intimacy word with God?
Well, I think there's a few different answers. One of them, it feels unproductive. It's probably the one biggest thing above everything else that the enemy truly doesn't want you to do. I think he's okay if you read your Bible every day. I think he's okay if you go to church 3 times a week. I think he's okay if you sing worship songs and, have them on the radio all day. But you start getting intimate with the Father, and that's when you start becoming like him because you look into his eyes and you start spending time. And they say if you spend time with people, you start becoming like them. So you become a product of what you're hanging out with. Well, that really crosses the line for the enemy, because why would he want you to know what the Father's thinking? Why would he want you to know his ways? Because now you start to understand the enemy's schemes, and they become null and void. Like everything the Father shows you supersedes what the enemy can do. So he becomes a useless thing, the enemy does.
Well, notice Jesus modeled to the disciples what a relationship looked like with the Father. And that was because he would leave them or set aside time and go off and be alone with the Lord. So intimacy, as we've heard this before, and it's been said before, intimacy without relationship is a one-night stand. We have seen this with the people that we've met and discussions we've had about people's journey with the Lord. It's more about serving him than being in a relationship with him. And our desire, after what you and I had gone through and our journey when we first started, was that since we're all about relationships and seeing people, it's really no different than anyone else. It's communion, it's communicating, it's making time, setting aside time for the Lord. And what happens when you do those things, intimacy just begins to follow. It becomes knowing someone. It becomes spending time with someone. That's how you really begin to hear the voice of God. And so that's what we've always endeavored to do is talk about what does your relationship with the Lord look like, and has there been intimacy? What does that look like? What does your communion and your time with him look like?
Well, you can tell when a man and a woman walk into a room if they're intimate or not. You can tell if they've been close. You can tell if they're far apart. You can see it on them. You can be like, man, that couple's, they're having problems. Like they're not communicating. They don't hold hands. They sit down and they scoot away from each other. And then you can see a couple that's madly in love, head over heels, and the way they look at each other, totally different.
Isn't it interesting? Well, isn't it interesting because, and I say this, religion can make our relationship with the Lord difficult because there's a mindset that often takes place where you find that serving Him is much easier than being in relationship with Him. And if you're finding difficulties, if you find it difficult to be in relationships, then you're thinking, dear God, how can I be in relationship with someone I can't see when I can't even be in relationship well with someone I can see? But
That's
yeah.
right. Well, everybody that tries to prove God is real, they always use words, and they always use passages, they use verses and scriptures. But you will hardly ever, I challenge you to go find somebody that proves God's real through their relationship with Him.
Well, we're fixing to go this clip interview that we did with Alan, and we'll hear a lot more of what his perspective is.
This is going to be
intimacy.
great.
Yes.
Well, the way that I used to pray was based on what was in it for me. How could I get my prayers answered? How can Alan get something out of this? How can I grow closer to him without thinking about others? And what I've learned through spending time with the Father is that my prayer life really isn't about me. It's about my relationship with other people. And Jesus modeled that so well when He came out of the wilderness. When Jesus came out of the wilderness, He found His three, Peter, James, and John, and began an intimate relationship with those three men. And then He found the other 9. So one of the questions I ask, especially men, all the time is, who are you doing life with? Who's your 3? Who's your 9? And the majority, like the high majority of the men that I encounter, are doing life by themselves. So when I begin to pray, Lord, show me what intimacy truly looks like, He showed me who you're doing life with. And we could all say, well, I go to church, I go to a small group, I serve, I host a small group. But even then, that's not real intimacy. Intimacy is what we're doing right now. It's one-on-one. It's getting to know people, know where they're at, know what they think, how they feel, what they believe, and that way, and then weigh that against the truth of God's word.
You asked earlier, and we started going down this road of what's keeping people from being intimate with God. And, I mentioned a couple of things, but there's another one that, there's got to be a belief that you can actually be intimate with God. And we've been trained from little kids, we've heard these prayers, that they repeated over and over again. As I lay my head to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and it goes on and on. So we get into this rut of, okay, this is what it's like to pray. And for a long time, I prayed, just to have my bills paid. And I prayed just because I wanted my kids to be safe. And I prayed all these things, and I didn't realize for a long time that the Father wanted to be just close to me. And then there was these scriptures in the Bible I would read, and He would say, if you believe that you can say to this mountain, move into the sea, and you don't doubt it, then you'll have whatever you say.
That's good.
And then I become empowered when I really believe this. And so if we have that kind of authority on this earth, why are we not using it? What do you think about that?
Well, we often find ourselves committed to at least try. And what happens is distraction takes place. Something comes up. So we're constantly feeling like we're disappointing the Lord because we can't meet those expectations for discipline. I need to read my Bible. I need to pray. I need to do this. I need to do this. So we go in with a mindset, which is really the biggest thing, a mindset that says, He doesn't want to hear what you have to say. And what we've often heard and what we've often been taught is He did us a favor by rescuing and redeeming us by dying on the cross. But we forget He also came to restore a relationship that was lost to reinstate it. And that's what he did. He brought us back into right standing with the Lord so we could communicate and have a relationship with him. We didn't have to burn or sacrifice something to do that.
Yeah. I can remember this really point in time where I was in my closet and I was praying, and I had a 2-hour prayer time. And, I would mix it with worship and reading the Bible and that sort of thing. And I really felt like 2 hours was giving a lot to God, and I can remember one time it was getting close to where I'd have to leave and go to work. And I had just started journaling. And I was praying to God and just listening at this time. And he said, just when it starts getting good, you abruptly leave. And I started crying because I had no idea what I was doing to him. And when he said it to me, I felt like I was breaking his heart by leaving. And it gave me a new perspective. That started me on this challenge to figure out what was he calling me to do and why was it just getting good and I would stop and leave because I had to go to work.
When you're in a relationship with someone, especially on the very front end of it where it's newest, the thought of distance did not matter. A thought of I'm going to put a timetable on this did not matter. You would drive 2 hours to spend 30 minutes or an hour and drive 2 hours back.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we just approached it and said, Father, I don't know what it looks like to be intimate or to be in relationship with you or designate time, but I'm going to carve out time. I'm going to create a place, and then I'm going to invite you, and whether I hear from you or not, I'm doing this out of honor of what you did for me and what you're doing in me and wanting to continue to show yourself through me. So if you do that, just create a place and carve out some time, and it's amazing what happens. He sees your desire to make yourself available so he can show up. You know what I'm saying?
Well, what I found was I can remember one day I was challenged by a friend that I actually crossed over a 2-hour deal. Like I took time off, like I took off work that day. And I can remember how unproductive it felt. I mentioned that a while ago. It seemed so unproductive to sit and just listen on the Lord. And by the way, that's what we're talking about here, is we're talking about not just praying, not just giving God an earful of the things that you would like to have, but to actually go before the professor, the creator, the all-knowing, the great almighty, and listen and just say, here before you I sit, and I'm going to sit before you for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or whatever it is. I know that goes a little deep for people that are listening, but just hear me out. I started getting answers to situations and circumstances in my life that I could never hear before because they were secrets. They were secrets. I was seeking out secrets, and God, to trust you to give you a secret is really big. You wouldn't tell your secrets to just anybody unless you could trust them. So we're not just wasting time. We're developing trust between us and the Father. Are you willing to put in the time to seek me out? Or are you just trying to get my goods so you can be profitable?
That's really, really good. When it boils down to it, you either desire or are willing to want to do that or not. And so let's go to this clip, James.
Let's do it.
Number one, get in your prayer closet. You've got to have a place where you spend time with the Father that's reserved just for you and him. He craves to spend time with you. He wants to show you your value. When I did that for the very first time, it radically changed my life because he met me there. When I sat myself down in my closet and said, here I am, he immediately poured out. He wanted me to know that it was worth coming to see him.
I can remember the first time Alan called me. I still have the voicemail. And we had been talking about getting in the prayer closet. And the first time he finally did it, he called me and he was crying over the phone. I didn't answer it. I didn't, for whatever reason, I was busy, but he left a message crying on my phone about the experience he had in the prayer closet. And we'd been talking about it for months, if not over a year. So I love that clip of Alan and how he talks about that, because I know how important it is.
That's so good, James. Yes, and I heard that voicemail, and it was so good. But I'll tell you, James, what was interesting in what Alan did was he purposed in his heart. He refused to hold on to the failures or the shortcomings or even the desire to pursue the Lord. You know, in Jeremiah 29:11, it talks about the thoughts and the plans that God has for us. But it's not till verse 13 that he says, but only when you search, you will only search and find me when you seek me with your whole heart. And there is a place where every individual has to say, I'm not going to be in a relationship anymore unless I can experience all that is for me. And I want to know a God I don't know. I want to know him more intimately. I want to know him. It's not just enough to serve him. It's not just enough to go through the disciplines or go through routine or whatever I do with my time and my schedule. I'm going to give him my heart. And doing that, what happens is he will meet you there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I learned to hear his voice by just sitting and listening. You know, I got so caught up in it. I believe everybody should go through this. I believe the problem that a lot of people face is they've never experienced what we're talking about. Like, I didn't know it existed. I had a good prayer life. I had a good, regimented, Christian walk with the Bible reading and stuff like that. I mean, I could run with the best of them, but I never experienced intimacy. It was something unknown to me. However, I have found that many people haven't crossed over that boundary, that line in the sand that says, come find me, come chase me, come seek and see what I've got, come see that I am good, come taste it. And if you don't taste it, you don't know what you're missing. I mean, you've never had a Snickers bar until you had one, and then or whatever your favorite candy is, or whatever it is. So that's something we could spend an enormous amount of time on, but unfortunately, we're out of time.
We're done, James.
We hope this episode of the Called to Love podcast has enriched your life and offered valuable principles to apply on your personal journey. Please explore our website at www.calledto.love for more information and to share your feedback with us. Until our next episode, may you find peace and love. And always remember, you are called to love.